Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amour de Soi Wellness. And Donovan Jensen is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hi, everyone.
How's it going?
Welcome to our first video of our series of Happy Talks. And today we're going to just introduce ourselves, talk about how we met each other, and kind of the purpose and mission behind this video blog series.
Yeah, so I'll start with just kind of what we're trying to do here, which is basically we're both interested in the happiness space and mental health and just well-being in general. And we wanted to start creating some content around that. We're still kind of filling out the exact details and format of how everything's going to look. But for the most part, that's what you can expect is different content that will help you increase happiness or generally understand more about happiness.
So just a little background about how me and Donovan met each other. I actually got connected with him through LinkedIn. I was doing some outreach for my business to software engineers because I work with a lot of stressed out, anxious, busy professionals. So I was just figuring, hey, maybe people in tech could use my services. And I reached out to Donovan and he was like, I'm actually pretty good and I've done like X, Y, and Z, and I've done a lot of stuff for my personal growth and development. And I was really, really impressed at, hearing all the things that he does. And I also discovered that he also does a lot of video content and had his various channels of various activities, including How to Happy. So I was really intrigued by everything that he did, and we kind of started collaborating, working together to create content for all of you. And we're happy to be here and work together to just spread some happiness.
I know that, when you reached out, you kind of were, like you said, reaching out to software engineers and you have a plan for people or to help people with general well-being. Would you like to kind of just describe what that is?
Yeah, so I'm a naturopathic doctor, which is more of like a holistic, integrative doctor that's looking at addressing the root cause to people's concerns so we can resolve those medical conditions or other conditions that they're dealing with. So I have a 5-step process that I walk my clients through to really have them feeling not just symptom-free, but the best that they could possibly be, like really enjoying and thriving in their life. So those 5 steps is called my Amour system. The name of my business is called Amour de Soi Wellness, and that's love of yourself in French, but not in the narcissistic way. It's actually as a means of survival, because if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't contribute to others when we're depleted in life. So that's what I stand for. And the system that I developed, the Amour system, the A stands for amazing foundation, which means good nutrition, exercise, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, the basic fundamental things about health that most of us already know, but implementing those things that we know is a challenge for some people. So I help them with giving them a plan and action steps to follow so they get that foundational work in place. Because if the foundation isn't in place, everything else that I recommend is not going to work as well as it could. The second part, the M in my system, is for mindfulness, which looks at, the psychological inquiry or counseling therapy aspect. And that's really important. I'm a huge believer in the mind-body medicine. And some of the tools that I offer is biofeedback, which is kind of like retraining your nervous system to be able to relax, like on cue, essentially. And then I also do hypnotherapy, which is a combination of counseling plus meditation. It's the style I do is called neuro-linguistic reprogramming. And it's not me just talking at you, it's actually conversing while you're in a relaxed state. And generally people tend to open up a little more so we can go into more depth rather than staying in their head and intellectualizing everything, where they understand why they do certain things because of their past history with the parents or whatever it might be. It actually goes to a more emotional level. And I think that is what causes it to be more effective faster, in my opinion, from my experience, because I've done it with hundreds of people. So then I go to my next step is the O, which stands for ordering labs, and ordering specialty labs that go beyond just your basic blood work that's ruling out some diseases. This is looking at how best to optimize your health, what foods and supplements would really optimize your mind and body so you can really perform at the best that you can be, both at work or in your health or exercise, all of those aspects. So it really dials in on, those things, so you can really know, oh, am I shooting in the dark with a supplement? You can see, oh, I'm deficient in this vitamin or mineral. This is what I need. So the next step in my system takes me to the U, which I kind of touched on before. It's called uncovering root cause. And that's really important, because it's not that I'm anti-pharmaceutical at all. It's just kind of how our healthcare industry is set up right now, where people just get 10 minutes with their doctor and they get a pharmaceutical prescription and then they're sent on their way. And that's not really getting to the source of the problem. Diabetes medication doesn't cure diabetes. What cures diabetes is actually making some nutrition and lifestyle changes. So really exploring what's really at the source and healing that whatever's I don't want to say broken, but just whatever it is that needs healing in a way. And that takes me to my last step. The R stands for revitalize. And again, it's about not just being symptom-free, but actually breathing life back into all aspects, whether it's work, health, relationships, your sense of fulfillment in life, and having that in place so you're really thriving in life. That's what I really care about. So my process, I have a program called the Survive to Thrive program that's 6 months, and it really walks them through all those 5 steps. And yeah, I have great results, and I love what I do.
That sounds really cool. And it also sounds like a program that's really holistic, right? Like you mentioned before, that's really covering a lot of different aspects of life. On that note, as someone, let's just say that was considering joining this program, what kind of person, or how would I know if it's a good fit for me?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And that's something I do. I don't just take on anyone in my program. There's a screening process, because I want to make sure that I can get you results. So I do want to make sure you're a good fit before you join the program. And part of my process in figuring that out for both of us, not only that you're a good fit for the program, but that I'm a good fit for you, I kind of go through a phone call or Zoom session with them to really answer any questions and really dive deep in what kinds of things that they're dealing with and what kinds of things have they tried in the past that hasn't worked as well as they'd like, and to see if I can offer something different that I think would work better. And then also what's really, really important is the commitment. If you're not committed to doing the program, as I'm designed, if you're not committed to doing the steps and recommendations, then you're not going to see results. And that's important to me. That's part of my screening, on a scale 1 to 10, how committed are you to follow my recommendations? And if you're 7 or less, then I'm I don't think now is the time for you to do my program, because you're not going to see as much of the results. So you have to be an 8, 9, or 10 commitment level. And it's not that I'm going to throw you into extreme crazy things to do off the bat when you have a crazy busy schedule. I'm happy to work with you and meeting you where you're at. If it's baby steps with the nutrition wise, maybe you're not ready to dive full in with clean eating because you've never done anything like that. Maybe it just means cutting out soda. That could be a big step for you. So I'm willing and happy to work with where you're at, but you do have to take the steps that you gave your word to, and I'll hold you to account to help you through that process. So that's really the key thing is are you committed?
Yeah, so it sounds like you said it's 6 months. So for some people or most people, it's probably relatively long, but it sounds like there's some steps in place to make sure that if you start in this process or enter into this process, there's already been some level of fit determined to make sure that you're going to actually see results as a client. And then that way you're not just going in blindly and saying like up front, okay, I'm committing to 6 months, except I don't know what I'm doing. There's some steps in place to really make sure it's the right choice for anyone who starts to do it. I did have another question in terms of, so you are a doctor. How does this program fit in terms of, I guess paying for it is how you think about it, but like, is this medical care? Is this kind of like a coaching or training program, some combination? How do these kind of aspects mix?
Yeah, that's also a great question. And it is kind of like a blend of a lot of different things. It is kind of getting some medical expertise, as well as like some mindfulness, like counseling, as well as like nutrition, as well as like coaching, because I am your guide and your coach. I'm not just here. Well, I am here to educate you on a lot of sciencey stuff, but I also want to empower you, inspire you, motivate you to really like live your best life. And that's really important to me. So that way you have like the guidance and support through the 6 months. You have, in my program, you get 2 telehealth or video consults with me every month. And that way, we're keeping you on track. I know where you've been, where we want to go, and be able to keep it all together, which makes it fun for me. So as far as like being able to pay for it, I've had people, I don't accept insurance because one, as a naturopathic doctor, I can't accept insurance in California, but 2, the insurance industry doesn't actually support like health optimization. It just supports like, oh, when it's really broken, then we'll fix it, maybe. And it actually, it goes into like, you get 10 minutes with your doctor. They write your prescription. That's what the industry is set up for insurance. So if I want to be able to practice the way that I want, I wouldn't be able to accept insurance to actually see the results that people want to see. So as far as like how, if people are, have financial limitations, some companies, because I work with a lot of busy professionals, some companies do offer like a personal professional development reimbursement or tuition or scholarship. And so I've had some software engineers been able to use that, and that can help maybe not pay for the whole program, but at least help a little bit towards that. And then also if someone has like HSA, which is health savings account, or a FSA, which is a flex spending account balance, it basically works like a credit card that you can use for like health and wellness services. So they can apply that towards my program too.
Cool. So it's definitely more of a program for kind of enhancing your life as a whole. It's definitely not a, I have had a headache for 5 days and need a diagnosis kind of thing. It's more of like I don't want to say preventative because it's not quite preventative, but just something that's like general enhancement. That's what it sounds like to me.
No, it is kind of like health and wellness enhancement or optimization, really.
Cool. I think that pretty much covers all the questions that I had. Was there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think you covered really most of, the things that I would like to share. So we can turn it around, and I'd love to ask you some questions.
Yeah, sure.
Great. So Donovan, I'm curious, like, how did you get started in your journey of personal growth and development?
So I always have had an interest in the human mind, and just ever since I was little, I would see people doing certain things and wonder, like, why is this person doing this? Obviously, just when it was things that seemed a little bit strange or off or didn't make sense to me. So in college, I studied psychology, and I learned some of the mechanics of how the mind works and some information. But as I got out of college and started facing other problems in life, I realized that I didn't really have the tools to handle them. Specifically, I had kind of a rough breakup towards the end of college, and I didn't really feel like my education had given me any of the tools to actually manage the emotions or some of the other struggles that I was feeling. Also getting out of school, I didn't have next steps plan. So I was a little bit confused on like, how do you make choices about what to do, because school, all the way through school, is roughly planned out. But then after that, it kind of opens up this huge set of choices. So I started wondering about how to make these kinds of choices as well. So I started getting into a lot more practical resources, or really I explored all kinds of resources, but finding more practical resources with actual tools and information on how to actually act or to make choices or to do things that had an impact on real life, as opposed to just the theoretical stuff that I got out of school. At the same time, as I was going through those resources, I noticed a lot of them were crafted in a way that was a little bit too airy for me, like not really backed up well, or really just wasn't super logical or didn't feel logical to me. So I kind of realized there was a little bit of a gap in terms of a space for kind of pulling some of the information that was more practical and crossing it with kind of the research, or at least some awareness of the research going on in the psychology field, to refine out things that are going to be useful for people. So I thought that it would be a really interesting project to kind of develop resources with that in mind. Another thing that I ran into is some of the resources I found sounded really nice, but were super hard to implement or know how to implement. So, you hear like a cliche phrase like choose happiness, but it sounds great, but at the same time, what does that mean? Like, what can you actually do with that information? And at the same time, having those kind of vague, high level phrases makes some people feel even worse, right? Because they hear something like choose happiness and it's like, well, that sounds really nice. And then they have a bad day and they're like, well, why didn't I choose happiness? And the story is so much more complex and there's so much more going on. So another piece of the journey was that I just wanted to create tools that people would find easy to use and that made sense. Really trying to step away from things that are so broad and vague that they're easy to misinterpret and very hard to implement.
Right. Yeah, no, I love what you shared. And I know, and I work with a lot of people who are experiencing like depression or anxiety. And, it's not just something like, oh, be happy, just turn it off. It's not that simple. It is not that simple. It's like if they could have choose to be happy, then they would. It's not like they necessarily like choose their depression, but there are like steps and actions that can help you get out of that depression. That's what it sounds like you were talking about, like tools and your actions that would make a difference.
Yeah, and I think that's where the biggest gap is, right? That we have information and understanding of certain triggers or things that cause other events. And we also have people experiencing unpleasant states or just, generally not as happy as they could be. And the gap between those people who need this information and the actual information that's being shared out most broadly is pretty big. So another thing that I noticed too, as I've been working and researching in this area, is that sometimes the information that is extremely useful is shared in a way that isn't approachable, right? It's either too dry or too technical, and it can be hard for people to digest. So that's another piece too, is actually creating these tools in a way that makes sense and isn't too overwhelming, because you want to find the balance between like, a hardcore research article full of psychological terms that only people know if they studied psych, and these more broad, open cliches.
Right. No, I get it. Is that what kind of inspired you to start How to Happy?
Yeah, so I really just wanted to take little bits of information to start with, for things that I had kind of found to be useful and share those out. So I started the website How to Happy and wrote some blog posts, made some accompanying videos, as well as I have an Instagram page that I try to post to most days with just something very small and digestible. And then for the last several years, I've been working on a book to kind of congeal all this information. That's still in the works, so that'll be something to talk about some other time. But essentially, I'm just trying to right now share these little pieces of information that I find are useful while I put together a more comprehensive plan that covers end to end the kind of ideas that I'm most interested in and think are most useful.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's really, really inspiring. And it's great work that you're doing and offering to the public, which I think is a valuable resource. So, what I'm curious, like, how did you end up becoming a software engineer?
Yeah, so the big draw for me there was so this journey I've been on, I probably got serious about 5 years ago, is when I really decided, hey, the thing that I want to do is share this information with people.
Mm-hmm.
As I started working through that journey, I realized there's a huge gap between some of these tools and exercises and actually being able to implement them. So, for example, you might read a book, and this has probably happened to most people. I know it's happened to me a million times, where I read a book and there's a lot of information in there that I look at and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. Cool. I'm going to start, writing in a journal every day to plan out my intentions. And then I finish the book and I'm like, okay, I'm going to start tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and I end up doing something else. And then all of a sudden I'm at the end of another book and it's a month later and there's some other thing that I wanted to try. And, there's just, even though a lot of the things are easy, there's enough friction that they don't always happen. So I thought that software would be a great way to bridge that gap because we always have devices now, we always have something. So I started getting into software with the idea originally that I could learn, a little bit of it and then code something up and have something in 6 months. Turns out there's a lot more to learn than that. It's a whole giant field. So I've actually decided to spend several years actually in the software field, learning really the ins and outs so that eventually I can build out the kinds of tools that I'm talking about, where they're basically exercises or tools to increase happiness with as low friction as possible, and also in a way that the software is actually good, right? I don't want to put together something that kind of works, kind of looks good, kind of helps you be happy. Like I really want to make sure that it's done right from end to end. So that's how I ended up in software and kind of what I'm working on right now.
Wow, that's a really interesting and unique path, and I really acknowledge you for the global impact that you're out to cause. That's really incredible, and it actually just like I can relate to what you shared about. I do a lot of audiobooks in the car a lot, and a lot of them are like personal development, self-help books, and I love those books. And there's always like tools and exercise that they offer, but I'm driving, so I can't just write it down or implement. I try to bookmark it, but I never go back and listen to those bookmarks. And I'm like, yeah, that would be great if there was an app. I don't know, this is just like spitballing ideas. If there was an app that like had all the exercises in there and just gave you a little reminder or notification to be like, okay, this is what you're doing today, when you're not driving in a car. So that would be really, really awesome. Or just to make it more actionable versus like, yeah, I have all these great tools from books, but yeah, implementing doesn't always happen. Yeah. And that's where you see results, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of a long-term plan. Like I don't have the details fleshed out yet, but yeah, essentially, like I've tried to keep a journal for several years. I do all right at it. I would do significantly better if my phone just buzzed and said, hey, here's your time to journal. Here's your prompt. Type it in here. Like that would get done almost every day. Whereas actually getting the journal out, which is ridiculous, it's almost no effort, but like getting the journal out or off the shelf and opening it and actually writing in it only gets done sometimes. So that's the goal, is just closing that gap and removing the friction. But that's a long-term plan.
Right. Yeah. And no, I get that. That's also the wave of the future is like everyone's technology is everywhere, and why not implement these happiness tools into technology? And that's what I'm doing in my practice, because I'm doing mostly, I've had like physical offices in both Seattle and Maryland, and then I moved to California, and I was like, I could have a bigger impact if I go virtual, and then I can work with anyone. And technology. It's incredible. So I'm a fan. Yes.
I guess that does lead me to another question, which is to do your program. People can do that from anywhere, or do they need to be in California? Or...
It does. I'm primarily working with people in California, but I do have like my naturopathic license in Maryland and DC, so I do some people on the East Coast too. But I can serve basically anyone as long as they have an internet connection. It might just be more like wellness consulting versus I'm not there to diagnose you and be a traditional doctor, but I am like your health consultant to enhance your life and your health. So that's kind of how we can work around it, I guess. But yeah, that's because actually in Southern Maryland, what kind of inspired me, I was in Southern Maryland and I was the only naturopathic doctor around. Within an hour radius, I was the only one in my county and all the neighboring counties. And I just saw everything and anything, and I felt bad when I left because I wanted to be in California to be near my family because I was the only one and there were no other doctors in that area. Outside of like metropolitan areas, there are a lot of places that just don't have access to an integrative or a naturopathic doctor. So it's definitely necessary. It should be, it is about preventative medicine, and we could totally reduce the amount of medications people are on, the amount of like surgeries people need. If everyone like worked on their foundational components of health, that would be amazing in itself. So, as well as like the other things that I offer. Yeah.
That's really cool. And yeah, it makes sense to me that if we can kind of tweak a few things upstream to avoid the problems, it's a lot easier than actually waiting until they happen and then trying to fix them.
Yes, makes it a lot easier. Yes. Mm-hmm. Great. All right. Well, I think that concludes our first episode. I want to thank you all for joining in and listening, and stay tuned. We've got a lot coming up, and we're excited to share and spread the happiness.
Yep. Thanks for spending your time just checking out what we have, and looking forward to seeing you again.
You can check out more content at howtohappy.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up to date on the videos. We've also got a Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook that you can check out. See you next time.